British politics rarely gives us moments that feel this raw, this real. But when Kemi Badenoch steps into the frame, everything changes. The tone, the tension, the truth, all collide in a way that's impossible to ignore. This isn't about rehearsed lines or party slogans. It's about one leader calmly tearing through the illusions others built. Every word lands with weight. Every fact feels like a reckoning. What happens next isn't debate. It's exposure sharp, direct, and unforgettable. Whether you agree or not, you'll feel it. Let's dive in and see how it all unfolded.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the Prime Minister knows something I don't know. There's only one hospital in my constituency.
From the moment Kemi Badenoch rose to speak, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted dramatically. This wasn't a routine exchange of political jabs. It was a masterclass in composure and control. Without raising her voice or resorting to theatrics, Badenoch methodically dismantled Labour's narrative on the economy, growth and leadership. Keir Starmer, by contrast, seemed visibly unsettled. His usual reliance on shaky statistics, recycled talking points, and carefully rehearsed slogans simply didn't hold up under scrutiny. What unfolded wasn't just a clash of political views, it felt like a public reckoning. And what came next? Few were prepared for it. Badenoch's response landed with precision, leaving Starmer struggling to recover. His attempt to respond only deepened the discomfort a moment that left even his supporters wincing. Let's break down exactly what happened.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the Prime Minister knows something I don't know. There's only one hospital in my constituency. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, since Labour took office, Mr. Speaker, inflation has nearly doubled, growth has halved, and unemployment has surged. Is this what the Prime Minister meant when he tweeted that the economy is improving?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, since the general election, 500,000 more people are in work. And I know she doesn't mention that. She's fixated on talking Britain down. We're investing in the future. Mr. Speaker, even in the last 2 weeks, the Strategic Defence Review, 30,000 new jobs building submarines. Yesterday, the sizable announcement, 10,000 new jobs. Tens of thousands of construction jobs building the social and affordable housing that was announced this morning. That's the difference that Labour makes in government.
Kemi Badenoch lights the fuse and instantly Keir Starmer scrambles to cloud the air with political smoke. But Badenoch isn't there for theatrics. She turns to the numbers, calmly and surgically dismantling the illusion Labour has been trying to project. Her point is unmistakable. What's happening in Britain isn't recovery, it's decline, dressed up in polished headlines and well-rehearsed soundbites. When Starmer responds, it's his silence that speaks loudest. He skirts around the key issues, clinging to a single statistic as though it might shield him from scrutiny. But his delivery betrays him a trace of defensiveness, a hint of performance. It's the sound of a politician trying to control the narrative while the facts burn through his talking points. He pivots to broad claims and abstract achievements, big, glossy projects that feel disconnected from the everyday struggles of ordinary Britons. Like listing new paint jobs while the house burns down, none of it answers the concerns Badenoch just laid bare. His tone stays measured, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes tells its own story. Before we continue, if you're finding this analysis insightful, do take a moment to like, share and subscribe for more sharp political commentary. Now, let's get back to the debate.
Mr. Speaker, he must be talking about a different economy. All of us in this House heard about unemployment increasing. Unemployment has increased every month since Labour took office. Last year, he said he was taking the winter fuel payment away to balance the books. But the books are not balanced. In fact, they are worse. This year, the deficit is forecast to be £10 billion higher since the budget. Not since last year's election, since the budget. In what way are the books now balanced?
Mr. Speaker, she's obviously missed the interest rate cuts, the growth figures for earlier this year, the huge, the strategic defence review, local transport, £15 billion going in, free school meals, Sizewell, social housing. Mr. Speaker, but she stands there to lecture us, and I say Liz Truss is obviously back in vogue, advising reform officially now, haunting the Tories, and I remind her that the Shadow Home Secretary, I think he was then Chief Secretary to the Treasury, he gave the Liz Truss budget, Mr. Speaker, 9.5 out of 10. The Leader of the Opposition said what was wrong with Liz Truss's budget was not necessarily the package, that was all right, it was the way it was sold. They've learned absolutely nothing.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, he loves talking about Liz Truss because he loves talking about Liz Truss. Why? Why? Because he wants to hide from his own economic record. He's a coward. He's a coward. Every time he stands up there and talks about Liz Truss, it's because he is scared about talking about his record and what is happening to the economy out there. Let's bring it back to the U-turn, which he's running away from. A U-turn on a policy that his MPs went out defending time and time again. Let's go through what's happening here. 1 minute, they said it was right to take the winter fuel payment away, that there might be a run on the pound. The next minute, they said it was right to give it back. This is laughable. He stands there all puffed up and self-righteous. Why can't the Prime Minister just admit that he made a mistake?
Kemi Badenoch doesn't mince words. She goes straight for the jugular. Keir Starmer tries to ease the tension with a half-hearted joke, but Badenoch doesn't flinch. Instead, she doubles down, cutting through the noise with precision and purpose. This isn't just a critique of Labour's failures, it's an indictment of betrayal. Behind Labour's polished rhetoric, Badenoch exposes the reality. Rising unemployment, unkept promises, and an economy that tells a very different story from Starmer's speeches. She revisits one of his old pledges, the promise to Times balance the books, Times and shows, with cold clarity, how that promise has not only failed but aged disastrously. The numbers aren't improving, they're worsening. Starmer claimed he'd repair the system, yet under his watch, the cracks have only deepened. When pressed, Starmer's response falters. Instead of addressing the facts head-on, he pivots, deflecting to the past. He name-drops a former Labour leader, as if invoking nostalgia might distract from the present reality. But the attempt falls flat. It feels like desperation, not leadership. Badenoch calls it for what it is, fear. She doesn't need to elaborate. The word alone cuts through the chamber like a blade. From that moment, Starmer's composure begins to crumble. Each deflection, each hollow reassurance, only underscores his unease. By the end, it's clear this isn't a debate anymore, it's a dismantling. Starmer dodges, but Badenoch dominates.
Mr. Speaker, they left a £22 billion black hole that we had to fill, and that's why we took the right decisions. We've stabilised the economy, that's why we've seen 4 interest rate cuts. The triple lock is committed to on this side. They say it's unsustainable on that side. That's £470 for most pensioners and good Q1 growth. 3 weeks ago, I said that I wanted more pensioners to be eligible for winter fuel. I'm really pleased. We set out the threshold and the certainty that is needed. And she says I don't want to talk about my record. What about free trade deals, record investment, free school meals, breakfast clubs, social and affordable housing, defence review, Sizewell? We could go on all morning, Mr. Speaker, but we've got the Chancellor who's going to say even more in a minute. Mr. Speaker, I think she at the weekend said that she would be getting better in the role. She could start with apologising for the Liz Truss budget. That would be better.
Mr. Speaker, I get better every week. He gets worse. Yes, he gets worse. Last week, Mr. Speaker.
If you think that is a good look, it is a very bad look. And think twice before you try to shout somebody down in that way.
Mr. Speaker, last week he had to get his lines from the Russian embassy. I think we all know that he is getting worse, and what he does not want to talk about is how he is going to make the economy better. That is what the people out there want to hear, and he's got no answers. His trade deals have unraveled. The Strategic Defence Review, everyone out there is asking where is the money coming from, and the fact is he doesn't know how to balance the books. The Chancellor says the winter fuel payment U-turn won't be funded through higher borrowing. So will the Prime Minister admit that it will be funded by putting everybody's taxes up?
Starmer falls back on his familiar routine deflection. It's become his trademark move. Once again, he shifts blame elsewhere, listing off what he calls bold decisions and new initiatives, as though a barrage of buzzwords could conceal the cracks in his record. But instead of sounding decisive, it comes across as hollow, more like a political checklist than a genuine defence. Each talking point feels rehearsed, disconnected from the realities people are facing. What makes it worse is his tone. There's a faint smugness as he tries to flip the narrative, implying that Kemi Badenoch is the one grandstanding. It's an old political tactic, accuse your opponent of showmanship to dodge the real questions. But Badenoch doesn't bite. She cuts through the performance, grounding the debate in hard truths. There's no ego in her response, just a firm rejection of political theatre. She calls out the fakery for what it is and the audacity it takes to pretend all is well, while ordinary Britons struggle with rising bills, job losses, and an economy buckling under poor leadership. Her words drag the discussion back to where it belongs, reality. By the time she's finished, Starmer looks exposed a leader, talking about defence contracts, while the public worries about heating their homes and putting food on the table. His conviction is an act. Badenoch dismantles it piece by piece.
Mr. Speaker, I think she let slip on the Matt Ford programme the other day that she rehearses her fury for PMQs. So a very good rehearsal this morning, I think. Mr. Speaker, she asked what we're doing. At the budget, we put record investment in our NHS and our public service. Record investment. And she comes every week to carp on about national insurance, but she doesn't stand there with the courage of her convictions and say she'll actually reverse it. And the reason she won't, because she won't stand up and say she's against the investment in the NHS. She won't stand up and say she's against the investment in our public services. And we'll all listen very carefully in just 20 minutes when the Chancellor lays out more record investment as to whether they welcome it or whether they say they wouldn't support it.
Mr. Speaker, every week I come here to tell him the truth. The truth that the economy is in a spiral because Labour, that's all of them, Labour put up taxes that cut growth, and we all heard the Prime Minister, he didn't rule out tax rises, so they are going to have to put up taxes even more. This is a spiral. And if that wasn't bad enough, Mr. Speaker, if that wasn't bad enough, this morning we heard that because of his terrible Chagos deal, Mauritius is scrapping income tax. Why on earth should the British taxpayer pay for £30 billion for tax cuts in Mauritius?
The deflection only deepens. Starmer, clearly on the defensive, attempts to dismiss Kemi Badenoch's firm and passionate delivery as mere performance, a textbook case of projection. He accuses her of being insincere while visibly grasping for his own footing, and when the pressure mounts, he reaches for the safest refuge in British politics, the NHS. But it's transparent. He isn't invoking it out of conviction, but convenience, using it as a political shield because he knows few will dare challenge him there. Badenoch, however, refuses to be drawn into symbolic territory. She stays laser-focused on substance, the economy. Her message is clear. Britain isn't just facing turbulence, it's heading into a steep decline. Taxes are rising, growth is stagnating, and, perhaps most shockingly, a failed tax policy has left foreign governments profiting while British taxpayers shoulder the losses. It's an extraordinary failure of economic judgment. With calm precision, Badenoch lays it out for viewers in simple, unvarnished terms, like a parent patiently explaining why the household finances have collapsed. This isn't just political theatre anymore. She's not merely exposing Starmer's weaknesses, she's diagnosing the deeper dysfunction within his leadership and within Labour's economic vision itself.
Mr. Speaker, Diego Garcia is a vital intelligence and strategic capability. And it's absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise it in very short order. That is why they started the negotiations in relation to it. And no responsible Prime Minister would let that happen. We've secured the base for the long time. That has been welcomed by our allies, by the US, by NATO, by Australia, New Zealand, India. It's been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And in the second column, we add reform, following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows this has nothing to do with national security, but his bad negotiating. I've had the security briefings. It was a bad deal before, and it's still a bad deal. And then in half an hour, the Chancellor is going to stand up and tell us that everything is fine. But the truth is, she has made bad choices. Bad choices that mean higher inflation, bad choices that have led to lower growth, bad choices that have meant that jobs have been lost every single month since Labour came into office. That's hundreds of thousands of families who've lost their income in Stoke, in Grangemouth, in Luton. Those are their constituencies, businesses across the country. The Chancellor has lost all her headroom. She's fallen out with the Cabinet. She's making unfunded spending commitments which she promised not to do. Isn't the truth that we have got the wrong Chancellor and the wrong priorities?
Under mounting pressure from his own record, Starmer attempts a familiar escape. He pivots sharply to foreign policy, speaking of allies, military bases and distant geopolitical threats, as though shifting the stage from Britain's domestic crises to a global arena might somehow restore his authority. It's a calculated diversion, an effort to appear as the statesman above the chaos, even as that chaos grows under his own leadership. But Kemi Badenoch doesn't let him get away with it, and neither does the room. She cuts straight through the posturing, bringing the conversation back to where it belongs, the nation's economy, the strained public finances, and the millions of ordinary Britons now bearing the brunt of political mismanagement. Badenoch doesn't speak in abstractions. She names the towns, the industries, the livelihoods lost under Labour's watch. Her argument lands not because it's theatrical, but because it's anchored in lived reality. She reminds everyone watching that this isn't about international headlines, it's about heating bills, food prices, and the growing sense that the government has lost touch with its own people. By the time she's finished, Badenoch has dismantled more than Starmer's talking points. She's torn apart his image of competence. The message is unmistakable. Instability, confusion, and internal division are the hallmarks of his leadership. Every promise of fiscal discipline, every claim of strategic control crumbles under the weight of results that simply don't add up. In the end, Badenoch doesn't just challenge Starmer's policies, she challenges his legitimacy to lead. And his silence, heavy and telling, becomes the answer the public won't forget.
The wrong choice they made was making her leader of the opposition.
At what point does avoiding accountability stop being a tactic and start becoming a leader's defining habit? It's a question many are now asking about Sir Keir Starmer, because if this is how he performs under mild pressure, what happens when the real tests arrive, when the country demands clarity, not deflection? For those following Britain's shifting political landscape, this debate is far from over. Stay with us for continuing coverage and in-depth analysis of how the nation's leadership is shaping the future. If you find value in our reporting, consider liking, sharing and subscribing. It helps us bring you more sharp, independent political insight.